I'm just thinking out loud before I go back to Gabversity and do my lecture on climate change. But I have noticed, and I'm learning exponentially quickly. So every year I learn more than the years behind combined. Hey, hey, hey. And what I'm learning, especially this year where I'm spending so much time with humans, especially through Periscope and through feedbacks, and I'm learning that one does not agree with people more than maybe 5 or 10% if you're lucky. And that's actually okay. Now, I know that sounds, Miss Kasha, hey, I know that sounds to most people like, yeah. But for the autist, the varying degrees oscillating between nothing and everything are stuff that don't exist. So what does that mean? It means that my brain, for example, just went through this whole episode with Gab Unsmacked, where I lost my shite. And I lost it because I thought there was no justice in the world. Because what the autist does is that when he or she sees that there is no justice in one situation, their brain then extrapolates and says there's no justice at all, right? It took a couple of hours to calm down, and then my brother to remind me that just because there is no justice in certain situations, it does not mean there is no absolute justice. He said, think of it as limited justice. And in fact, so did Helen. Helen said the same thing, which is quite funny. That, one is 34, one is 17, and they both come up with the same thing. So these are the things that the autist doesn't see at all, at all. It never occurs to me, even though I know that it doesn't occur to me, in new situations, it still doesn't occur to me. And I have to continuously be reminded that just because it is not 100%. It doesn't mean it's zero. There are variations between 0 and 100%. There can be 50% justice. It can be that you are biased to think that there is not justice because you are so different to regular humans. You will always fall through the cracks, or most of the time fall through cracks in just systems. Micro unfairness could lead to more fairness. Yeah, like it compounds when you think to yourself, like when you are different, then the justice system does not work correctly for someone like you if you are, a few standard deviations from the mean, right? Obviously, because the justice system, there is not enough resources at the moment as humans to be able to cater for every single person's situation. So it is a sledgehammer approach, and so a lot of people on the edges will suffer for that. And that's something I have to remember. And then I thought, okay, well, that's the same with people. I've noticed that now I've gotten to become friends with a lot of the Patreon and GoFundMe people, and they're all amazing. And what's interesting is they're all amazing in their own way. And it is not a plus or minus. As I was teaching on Gabversity about the number line, it is not positive and negative. There are complex numbers which exist between positive and negative. And I'm applying that mathematical concept to humans. Whereas, Scott, Miss Kasha, Alias, they can all be nothing alike and yet all be awesome. So the idea of being awesome is not a scale from negative to positive. It's a circular scale. So you can pure awesome could be the center, and each person can approach the center, awesomeness in a different way, right? You could look at it like that. Or the reverse, you could see awesomeness as the outer ring, and people can get towards awesome anywhere on that ring itself. Hey, Helen, just talking about you. All right. So that is, I know that for most people that's like a nothing, but for me in my author's brain, that is a massive concept. That is something I've been living for 36 years without knowing. I've just realized that today. So I'm going to put that on my calendar as a new rule for the authors to remember with regular humans. And so what I do, it makes me much more tolerant of other people, right? So for example, every person from my GoFundMe, and no one is flawless except pompous bitches. Uh, Boss Briggs got our own Pompous, which is pretty cool. So we're going to see some more Pompous in the US. Um, or Pompous in the arse. Pompous travels the planets and visits Uranus. Oh my god. Anywho. So what was I saying? I don't even remember what I was saying. Sorry. But yeah, I've learnt to appreciate everyone's differences. And I know I say that a lot, but to actually be able to articulate it variable via variable, it's a whole different playing field. It's not even something you can compare. They're completely from different dimensions. So you could think of it as a multi-dimensional metric space, right? And a metric space, if anyone's done abstract mathematics, which I'm guessing you may have, uh, each each unit is one distance away from the other unit, and that can only happen when you have an infinite amount of dimensions in a real metric space. Anyway, that's now how I've put it in my head, and that's it. That's all I had to say on that. I'm very excited about that. How different we all are. I often get surprised. Like, how did you came to that conclusion? Yeah, well, it happened today because of what happened with the court case today that was dismissed, and I was so angry and so upset and so, let's just say, getting precipitously close to the edge of sanity. Let's just put it that way, right? I came back to realizing after what my brother said. I thought there was no justice. That's it. The world is corrupt. I don't want to live here. I'm sick of it. I'm going to go to a mountain. My brother said, justice is limited, but it does exist. So it is not a zero or a full. Just because there is no such thing as absolute justice in this world, it does not mean that there is no justice. And that's what the autist brain does. If something doesn't work, then they think the whole thing's a failure, right? So he had to remind me that there is limited justice, right? And it is because of limited resources, and we define what we can attack via financial resources. Well, that's one way of seeing it as well, yeah. That's one way of seeing it. All right, but then what I've done is I've analogized that concept to this. And so when each person messages me, like Elle Brooks and Boss Briggs and Alias and Miss Kasha and Scott and Helen, all these Patreon supporters and GoFundMe, when you guys message me, there is no way to compare the type of conversation, because what's important to each person is completely different. And it's fascinating to me because it allows me a window into the world of neurotypicals, and each one is a different dimension. And it is absolutely fascinating to keep reminding myself that it is okay to have nothing in common with humans, and you let them say what they want to say, and then you might talk about something or complete information that they may not have had, or vice versa. And that relationship, even though it's different with each one, the strength of the relationship is actually the same. So the modulus, the distance away, which is what I was just doing in Gabversity. So you don't worry about the fact that you have limited things in common with someone. What's interesting is the strength of the relationship. And it's the strength that is what makes the relationship valuable, as opposed to what it is you may or may not have in common. And that's something I never realized before. And I don't know if that's obvious to most people, but I have to intellectualize things to understand. And what you can learn, yeah, absolutely. So it's very, very fascinating. I learned that I just put it all together in my head now, and I had to say it out loud and share it with you guys. So that's it. That's all I had. That is a new level of understanding relationships from the autist perspective. Yeah. I think agreeance is underrated, actually. Is overrated. Agreeance is overrated. Agreeing with someone is boring, and you learn nothing from them. It does take tolerance. Definitely takes tolerance. You're right. It's an active decision to be tolerant of other people. And the natural reaction for me, my whole life, natural reaction was, oh, I don't like him. I don't like this person. Oh, I don't like this person. I don't like this person. I don't like that. That's all I do. And then you realize that you don't like anyone, right? So you just listen to people. And over time, what a surprise. Another thing we have in common. Yeah, over time, you learn to not only be tolerant, but you actually like the differences. Like for example, one of our top scopers who's like, she's actually invested in the book like $1,000. Right, this was before, like, because I needed 25,000. I was able to raise 10 already before I even got onto Periscope, right? And Periscope's got the additional 2.5 out of the 15, right? That's remaining. And like when I first met her, my brain was like, oh no, she's too white. Oh, she's too blonde. Oh, hey, welcome back. Like they don't understand my Maronite background. All of these things, but over time, take it off. Just by hanging out with her, I have learnt to actually like her for those things that used to annoy me. That's the funny thing. It's the actual things that annoyed me, and now the things I like about those people. That's the part that I find amazing. I never realized that before. And by learning to do that, by learning to do that, it's allowed me to build relationships with everyone here from all different unbelievable, genetic and social predispositions. And it is an amazingly beautiful thing. I'm so glad I got to reach this age to discover that. In relationships, it's the other way around. Yeah. It is fascinating. It's fascinating. It's like, I don't want to sit on this grass because it's too yellow. And then in the end, you like it because of its color. Like that's sort of the analogy. Your annoying sides later. Sounds like you're talking from experience. You used to love become annoying. You will have to give a scope. Someone have to give a scope on relationships, because my version of understanding relationships is completely different. So I'm going to go onto the GoFundMe scope now. I'm going to read to you guys something from my lawyer about the big case. So I will see all my Patreon and GoFundMe people in the next few minutes. Good morning, America. Yes, this is true. True and funny. In that order. All right. Always a pleasure. And remember, gab smacked. Let's get gabbed. That's my brother. My brother's got a new one. It's called Let's Get Gabbed. I like that one better than remaining silent is not an option. No, I like get gabbed. All right. Let's do it.